Welcome to the local campaign, and thank you for joining us. Our debate tonight is for the riding of Ottawa-Vanier. I'll introduce the candidates in just a moment, but let me explain the rules for the debate. Each of the candidates will get 60 seconds for an opening statement. We've drawn the order for those opening statements at random just a few minutes ago. Then we'll move into a series of debates about the important topics in Ottawa-Vanier, throughout the National Capital Region, and across the country. In each case, I'll start the debate with a question directed at one of the candidates. He or she will have 60 seconds to answer that question on his or her own, and then we'll open it up to several minutes of debate from all the candidates on that topic. When we wrap up, we'll give the candidate to whom I originally directed the question 30 seconds to finish off on that topic. Each of the candidates will get at least one question, and then we'll move on to the closing statements, which we'll do in the reverse order of the opening statements, and they'll each be 1 minute in length as well. The candidates have not been told what the questions are in advance of the debate, so they'll be hearing them for the first time when I ask them. So let's introduce the candidates who are seeking your vote in the riding of Ottawa-Vanier. First of all, the Marxist-Leninist candidate, Coreen Legeais. Mauril Bélanger is the Liberal candidate. The Libertarian candidate is Coreen Corcoran, and the NDP candidate is Emilie Taman. There are two other candidates who are running in Ottawa-Vanier. They are the Conservative candidate, David Piccini, and the Green Party candidate, Nira Dukaran, and they were not available to join us for the debate. So let's begin with the opening statements. Again, 1 minute in length, and we'll begin with Coreen Legeais, the Marxist-Leninist candidate. Go ahead.
In this election, the Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada is calling on all workers, women, youth and seniors to be very active in creating the conditions so that the working class can occupy the space for change in a manner which opens the path to progress of society. This fight for change in this election must assist the working people to overcome their position of subordination. The first step is to throw out the Harper government and make sure that whoever is selected to form the next government is held in check. So we are asking for, calling for a new direction for the economy, an end to paying the rich, and increase the funding for social programs. We are also for establishing an anti-war government so that Canada is a factor for peace, not preparatory war.
Okay, thank you. Next up is the Liberal candidate, Mauril Bélanger. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Mauril Bélanger. As the MP for Ottawa-Vanier, I have helped solve a number of community-related problems, whether in Vanier, Sandy Hill, Manor Park. I've also helped over 10,000 people with my staff solve problems related to immigration, visas, taxation, work-related, pensions, and on and on. I believe that the first role of a member of Parliament is to help his or her constituents, and I have done that. I have also promoted linguistic duality throughout the country. I've promoted national unity, and for the last 3 years, I've become known as Mr. Co-op, because I have taken on the role of Liberal advocate for cooperatives. Merci. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up is the Libertarian candidate, Coreen Corcoran. Go ahead, you have 1 minute.
My name is Coreen Corcoran, and I represent the Libertarian Party of Canada. We stand for less government and more personal freedom, two values that I and many others across this great country value. Over the past few elections, I have watched us become a more divided country as our governments increasingly play favorites and try to woo voters by offering more and more perks with money they do not have. The country is truly at a crossroads. If we don't start making smart economic choices, we are heading into a bleak future from which we will likely never recover. The Libertarian Party of Canada wants to start untangling the web that took decades to spin. It has become generally accepted that the government will solve all of our problems. The freedom to choose from a variety of healthcare options is not available to us. Access to communication channels is highly regulated, and a truly free market economy is marred by special interest regulations and cronyism. Only the Libertarian Party of Canada is
Okay.
offering that a change
That's
this
time.
election.
Thank you. Finally, the opening statement from the NDP candidate, Emilie Taman.
Hi, I'm Emilie Taman, your NDP candidate for Ottawa-Vanier. Until recently, I worked as a prosecutor for the federal government. I took on corporate tax cheats, human smugglers, and environmental polluters. But as many in this riding know, it's become a lot harder to be a public servant these days. The Harper government's disrespect for the work we do has created toxic work environments that follow many people home. The government's disdain for science and fact-based policy development has left many of us genuinely scared for the future of our country. I believe that Harper's government must be defeated. I decided to run for the NDP when Tom Mulcair took the very principled position of opposing Bill C-51. I believe our country should be led by a prime minister with the principle who's ready to make the right decisions regardless of what the pollsters say. Different times call for different types of leadership. I have what it takes to rebuild our democracy. My career as a prosecutor has prepared me well for getting to the heart of a problem, building a consensus, and brokering solutions. I look forward to this discussion.
Thank you very much to all the candidates for your opening statements. So let's move into the debate portion of our telecast, and I'll begin with a question to Christian Legeais, the Marxist-Leninist candidate. Let's talk about affordable housing. What can we do from the federal government level to help communities like Ottawa and neighborhoods like Ottawa-Vanier provide more affordable housing to the people who need it most?
Well, we have to increase the funding for that. The government has cut the funding over the years, so this is very important to increase the funding as well, to increase the funding in all social programs. Affordable housing is a right, so if we don't, if society does not provide this right, it's not a modern society. At the same time, this should be in the hand of the people himself to decide how to build and how to improve their neighborhood. So I think that's the main thing. In Ottawa-Vanier, it's an important problem, and it should be solved by investing in all the social programs.
Okay, it's open to everyone on this topic now.
Okay, well, I'll jump in then. I think it's very clear that the Harper government has completely dropped the ball on ensuring that we have an affordable strategy in place, affordable housing strategy in place in this country. The NDP is committed to developing a strategy. We're going to renew funding agreements and ensure that there are incentives in place for businesses to create and build affordable housing units. Cooperatives being a large part of NDP has always been a big champion for cooperative housing, and we want to see that continue. We want to ensure that there are resources available not only for the construction of new units, but also for the maintenance of existing units so that people can enjoy a quality of life regardless of the type of housing they occupy.
Thanks for the question, Mark. I attended a meeting this morning about housing. And we recognize the importance of housing in our country. We have committed to adding $60 billion in infrastructure spending, $20 billion for transit, and to help us free up our roads in the morning, $20 billion for green energy to reduce the dependency we have on petroleum, and $20 billion over the next 10 years for social infrastructure. That is, the priorities there are affordable housing for poorer families and affordable housing for seniors. I fundamentally believe in the need to create a national housing strategy, and we will commit to helping the provinces and the municipalities and the Aboriginal communities to do just that, because our leader has committed to meeting, as opposed to Mr. Harper, who refuses to meet with the provinces, meeting them every year and going to the FCM meetings every year and meeting with the Aboriginal leaders every year.
I just wanted to say I don't think the answer to our affordable housing problem is with more government funding. I think we have far too many rules and regulations out there that are kind of handcuffing developers and leads them to build more profitable types of housing in our city. We look at Ottawa, we have condos going up everywhere, but none of the private builders seem that interested in building affordable housing. So I think we have to start looking at the reasons for that. What kind of red tape is out there right now that's preventing somebody from wanting to build affordable housing units versus a condo that's going to bring in millions of dollars once they're all sold?
Well, and I think that's where the government has a role in ensuring that there are incentives in place for developers and others to build affordable housing units. And I have to say, I would urge people to exercise great caution when they hear the Liberals talking about their $60 billion infrastructure investment, because as you just heard, the bucket of money that's being allocated in the Liberal plan to infrastructure includes all kinds of different things. And I find it troubling that whatever initiative is being discussed always has this $60 billion number attached to it. Mr. Bélanger did explain that it's to be divided into 3 pots, a third for physical, social, and green. And from my perspective and from the perspective of the NDP, that doesn't look like a very well-detailed costing plan in terms of infrastructure investment. Our party has provided the public with a detailed costing of the undertakings that we intend to implement in the likely event that we form a government. And so I would just exercise caution, because social infrastructure, according to the Liberals, includes not only affordable housing, but their supposed childcare policy and a number of other policies. So I just would urge people to be very cautious when they hear a price tag attached to any of the policies that are being advanced by the Liberal Party.
So what I'm talking about is not incentives, it's actually getting rid of the red tape to begin with, so that developers will actually want to go out and build these units on their own. I don't think incentives are the right way to go with any kind of development in this country. I think we have far too much bureaucracy, too many hoops to jump through for private sector to come in and build, grow, whatever it is. Incentives back to developers is not the way that our taxpayer money should be getting spent.
I'd like to mention 3 more things. First, we will look at the federal ownership of land that is unused now and contribute that to help build affordable housing here in Ottawa as well. Finally, not finally, but the 2 more things. On the matter of the private sector development, we will commit to 100% rebate on the GST. That's $125 million a year to encourage the private sector to build affordable rental housing. Finally, as the Liberal advocate for co-ops, we have committed to not only build more co-ops, but to renew every single existing agreement to subsidize housing. That would have threatened 50,000 people from losing their home. We will not do that. We will renew the agreements as the Conservatives have refused to do it. We will, and therefore, protect 50,000 people from losing their home.
Okay. Let's wrap up then, and we'll go back to Christian Legeais. You've got 30 seconds to finish off on this topic.
Well, I think that it's not an issue of incentive, but to consider the starting point should be that housing is a right, and it cannot be curtailed by an issue of money. So the investment in the social program are extremely important, and also this should not be left to the private sector. We don't believe in cooperation with, it should be by the government.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to the next question, which I'll direct to Liberal candidate Mauril Bélanger. We've already heard Bill C-51 come up. Let's talk about that a little more. It is a point of differentiation between the Liberals and the NDP, both of whom are running to replace the current government and talking about representing change. So why did you side with the government on this controversial bill?
We made a very principled decision because the role of a government is twofold: to protect its citizens and to respect their rights. There were elements in the bill that would have protected Canadians better, and that's why we supported it. But before we supported it, we pledged that we would propose amendments, and some amendments have been accepted by the government. Others have not. So we're going to be moving amendments to ensure parliamentary oversight, just as our four partners do, the US, New Zealand, Australia, and Great Britain. And we will also put a mandatory review of the entire bill within 3 years. And we will also define better the responsibilities and the powers of CSIS, so that's to protect our Canadians' rights.
Okay.
That's what we're proposing to do.
It's open to everyone now on this topic.
I have to say, the Liberal support of Bill C-51 demonstrated a profound lack of leadership on the part of its leader and a serious error in judgment on the part of the members of that party that supported it. To suggest that amendments going forward are going to have the required impact, this is a bill that received only 8 days of review in Parliament. That is completely unacceptable. We don't have an appropriate factual foundation upon which to even be talking about amendments. This question of security versus rights can only be adequately balanced if we understand the true security risk posed by terrorists or other interests which the bill purports to be protecting against. We have to go right back to the drawing table. We have to hear from experts who were excluded from providing relevant evidence to decision makers in the House of Commons so that we can accurately find that balance. Because to suggest that Bill C-51 strikes any kind of balance between security and fundamental freedoms is a fallacy. We don't even have a proper handle on what the security risk itself is. And without that information, it's clearly impossible to find any kind of balance. The Liberal Party's support for Bill C-51 was bad enough when you look at what the bill is, but to have supported such a bill in the context of a deeply flawed process, from my perspective, is deeply, deeply troubling and calls into question the entire approach that the Liberal Party has to policymaking in this country.
The MLPC joins the Canadian in demanding the repeal of Bill C-51 and similar legislation and call for providing right with a guarantee. The main thing is that this Bill C-51 does not protect Canadians. It just protects the government and criminalize dissent. The issue of this balance between right and security is not the case. This is law which are to criminalize dissent and to attack the right of conscience of the people. That's where this bill goes. Before the Bill C-51, you had Bill C-44, which give impunity to the Secret Service and all the government to violate rights and to violate law abroad. In Bill C-51, you have a section where it says that the Secret Service and those agencies can violate the Charter of Rights and can ask for suspension of all kinds of rights. So it has nothing to do with protecting Canadians. You cannot protect Canadians without protecting their rights.
And from the Libertarian point of view, we also would repeal C-51, Bill C-51. We believe in civil liberties and right to privacy, and don't see that this bill, in agreement with a few of the others here, is actually something that's going to protect Canadians. We would also like to see a greater role for CSIS to do more of to protect Canadians from the outside and do their kind of due diligence with anybody who wants to enter the country as an immigrant or any kind of potential threat to Canadians. We just don't see that the bill itself is something that's going to maintain our civil liberties and our privacy within our own country.
One thing I want to add is that we cannot trust the liberal on anything on this matter, because they are the one who adopted the anti-terrorist law in 2001. They are the one who adopted also Immigrant and Protection Act, which in which you have the security certificate by which a person can be expelled without knowing why. There is no way to do that. Those bills are full of pragmatic answer to the opposition to the government.
That's right. And if I could just pick up on that, I mean, I think we have seen a systematic attack by the Conservatives over the course of their tenure in government on civil liberties and in particular freedom of expression. And so once again, for the Liberals to have supported this bill at a time when it was incumbent on the opposition parties to be vigilant about mitigating to the extent that was possible Harper's attack on our freedom within this country. And I agree that the potential effects on dissent and on free expression by activists and others who oppose the government is so deeply troubling. And with that in mind, and the number of bills that preceded C-51 that moved in that direction, it's again where I say the leadership was so lacking, because the reality is C-51 appeared at the time of its enactment to have widespread public support. It's very clear now that it doesn't, and it's a little too late on the part of the Liberal Party to try to backpedal from their support of this bill at the time of its enactment.
Okay. Mauril Bélanger, you get the final 30 seconds on this anyway, so go right ahead.
We believe fundamentally that the role of a government is to protect its citizens and also respect their rights. We have pledged that within the first 100 days of forming a government, we will enact the amendments necessary to balance the bill, because there were elements in it that helped protect Canadians, as opposed to C-24, where there was nothing positive in that bill, and that one we've pledged to repeal immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next question, which I'll direct to Coreen Corcoran, the Libertarian candidate. I want to talk about local issues, national capital region issues. The mayors of Gatineau and Ottawa have asked for representation, a seat on the board of the National Capital Commission. We've also had this ongoing debate over the Victims of Communism Memorial. Do you support putting that memorial in the current location? And how would you take a different approach to decision-making about local issues?
I suppose my first point on decision-making for local issues is that Mayor Jim Watson did not invite any of the Libertarian candidates to any of his roundtables. So I'm not really feeling like we're part of the conversation anyway. That being said, I think memorials have to have a connection to the place where they're being put in. And I mean, I feel strongly, my grandmother came from Russia as a Mennonite and fled a communist regime. So for me personally, a communist memorial, I think, has meaning to me. Whether or not it has meaning to other people in Ottawa specifically, I'm not sure. It may be better suited to somewhere like Alberta, where there is a large Ukraine population who has suffered under those types of regimes.
Okay, it's open to everyone on this.
Well, I've been involved in this file for quite a while. We do support the notion of a memorial for the victims of communism, but not on that site. That is a site that's been prepared now for 20 years to accommodate the judicial triad, the Supreme Court, the Justice Building, and eventually the Federal Court. It has to be moved elsewhere. The NCC initially supported the notion of putting it on the Garden of the Provinces. We would have no problems with that. As to your first question, the governance of the NCC has to be reviewed, because it's become rather problematic in the sense that the week before the meeting on June 25th, the Conservatives appointed 5 more members who basically all voted in favor of the Victims of Communism site. So we do accept the fact that the voices of Gatineau and Ottawa have to be heard at the NCC table. Whether it's a voice with a vote or not, that will have to be explored, and we've committed to that and making sure that the NCC has a better way of governance, because right now it's a little tilted towards the Conservatives.
It's very clear that reforms are required in the National Capital Commission. Our party is committed to ensuring that the cities of Ottawa and Gatineau have representation on the NCC. While it is well understood that the NCC plays an important role in keeping the national interest in mind when undertaking initiatives in the National Capital Region, it's nonetheless critical that local interests have a voice on the Commission. And the NDP's position is that the mayors or representatives of the city ought to have a seat on the Commission. It is critical that partisanship be removed from the appointment process within the NCC, and we're committed to ensuring that that happens. And in terms of the Victims of Communism Memorial, I have to say, I think it's absolutely shameful that there was ever a discussion of putting the monument at the proposed location. Mr. Dewar from the NDP has been a very outspoken critic of this. It's clear that, as Mr. Bélanger noted, this site has always been understood to be in place and awaiting a federal court building. As a former Supreme Court lawyer myself and justice system participant at the highest levels, I can tell you that I understand the importance of having institutions in place where they can be seen by the public, where they can be accessed by the public, and it just seems a complete no-brainer that that site is an appropriate site for the federal court eventually to have a home, and to have had something like this pushed through with little consultation. In fact, for most members of the public in this city weren't even aware that this was happening until it appeared to effectively be a done deal. That's completely wrong. So there's clearly a problem with governance and leadership, and an NDP government would certainly move quickly to ensure that we can recraft an NCC that can do its job effectively with recognition of the importance of local interests.
I think that what we have to say with this anti-communist monument, it's not a monument to victims of some kind of regime. It's a monument to glorify fascism. That's only what it is. It's an insult to the people who have fought during the Second World War to have this kind of monument and to propose it as a national monument. It's simply the aim is that. There is no justification, or the only justification, it was a private project that the government picked up, pushed by foreign government. That's how it started. And now it should not be built there, that's right. It should not be built at all. It's a divisive question. It's based, is falsification of history. This number that the government is giving of 100 million come from a book, Black Book on Communism, Livre Noir du Communisme, which the historian refused to publish or to participate. It was a collective books because those numbers cannot be proved. So what you have is some Estonian, which are descendants of the fascists in that country, who are pushing for that. This assimilation of communism and fascism will not work.
Okay, we'll stop there, and we'll go back to Coreen Corcoran for the final 30 seconds on this topic. Go ahead.
We kind of merged into between what our role with the NCC, what role the NCC should play, and then it kind of went into the specifics of the memorial. I guess overall there should be more of a connection between the city and federal government when there are plans for these types of memorials being built. Just the question of what's the value of having them where they are.
Okay. I think it was my fault because I sort of asked two questions in one there, but you all handled it well, so it wasn't a problem. So the next question is for Emilie Taman, the NDP candidate. Another point of differentiation between the NDP and the Liberals is on government finances going forward. Let's talk about why you feel it's so important to balance budgets and whether it will take cuts to government spending to achieve that, whether you'll have to spend less than the Liberals in important areas, or whether you'll even have to cut into some things that are the government's already spending money on to pay for the promises that you've been making.
Well, listen, I mean, we don't have to talk about this as a hypothetical question in terms of, are we going to have to make cuts? What are we going to do? It's clear we've already put out the framework that establishes the deliverability of a socially progressive policy platform within the context of a balanced budget. We've been very clear that there are times in profound economic downturns where stimulus spending is appropriate, and that's why we supported deficit spending following the 2008 economic crisis. We're not at that place right now. It's not necessary. Our party has a long and proud history of balanced budgets. And as we've said time and time again, the solution to generating the revenues necessary to fund the progressive platform that we're advancing is to raise the corporate tax rate by 2% for the largest corporations to ensure that revenues are available. This is money that's being sat on. The rate has been cut on the promise of job creation, which has not materialized. So we're going to raise it by 2 points, keeping it competitive with our trading partners and creating the revenues necessary to fund the programs.
Okay, it's open to everyone now.
I was just wondering which NDP governments you were referring to when you said that you have a history of NDP governments that have balanced budgets. I'm not sure that the Ray NDP government from the 1990s did that. I think Manitoba also would probably tend to disagree with that. So I'm kind of wondering where you're getting the history of what are these balanced budgets?
The history is made up of more than one or two governments.
Right.
Tommy Douglas delivered universal health care in the context of a balanced budget, and he had 17 balanced budgets in a row. And listen, the bottom line is that we've shown how it is that we're going to deliver our promises and how we're going to deliver it within a balanced budget. So you just have to look at the fiscal framework. It's there for the public to see, which is more than we can say for the information that's been put out by the Liberal Party, which is very general and involves large pots of money and not a clear indication of how that money is going to be spent. And a great deal of vagueness about what it's going to take to come out of the deficit in time for a balanced budget. And if I could add to that, Mr. Trudeau has specifically criticized Mr. Harper for running deficits in good years, running deficits in bad years, and only balancing the books in election years. And yet that's exactly what Mr. Trudeau is now proposing to do, is to balance the books by the next election year. Our position would be that it's not necessary to go into deficit in order to deliver the programs that we have. And you can look at how we're going to do it. We've been transparent about it, and transparency is going to be the key to NDP governance in this country.
Mark, we are in a situation of anemic growth right now. We're technically into a recession, and the Bank of Canada has reduced the rates twice to stimulate the economy because they realized that we're not doing very well. Our unemployment level is too high. It's double for that of students, and we are committed to investing in our economy to make it grow. We will not raise taxes on corporations. We will raise taxes on the more wealthy Canadians by reducing taxes for the middle class. So anybody earning between $44,000 and $89,000 are currently taxed at 22%. We'll drop that to 20.5%. That's a 7% drop. And the middle class will benefit from that. And 9 out of 10 families with children will get more money than under the Conservative government, tax-free, because we will tax any family earning over $200,000. They will not get a benefit for their kids. And that will help our economy and will grow our economy, create jobs, make our competitivity better, and also ensure greater safety for Canadians, because right now people who drive in Quebec are afraid to go under overpasses. So we will fix those, and by investing $60 billion, and we're committed, Mark, to balance the budget in the last year. So we will see our economy grow for 3 years, and the balanced budget will be our 4th year in office. But the final thing I would like to say is that on the debt to GDP ratio, every year it will decrease because we have a $2 trillion economy and we're looking at a $10 billion deficit only. So the debt to GDP ratio will keep decreasing. Thank you.
But with the greatest of respect, I mean, these promises are not going to be sustainable in the long term. If 3 years from now, the Liberal government is having to make cuts, likely in areas such as the public service, which is of great concern to residents of Ottawa-Vanier, in order to bring the books back into balance.
That is not true.
Well, I mean, Mr. Trudeau has talked about spending reviews. We know what that means. That's code for the Liberals for making cuts within the public service. And it's troubling to see such a flippant approach to fiscal management, and that's not what you're going to see with an NDP government. We have socially progressive programs which likewise will stimulate the economy. Our childcare plan, for example, which is visionary, it's a complete novel approach. It's the type of program that the Liberals failed to provide after years and years of promising.
You are relying heavily on the provinces to supply the money. First of all, that daycare won't come in for another 8 years, and you're relying heavily on the provinces to help support that. So again, I'm not seeing, the connection with your balanced budgets. I don't think history is on your side. All due respect to Tommy Douglas, which was last century sometime, but there's no recent history showing that NDP is going to be able to balance a budget.
Fundamental changes in policy when it comes to the delivery of services cannot be implemented overnight. And a government that wants to insist that everything they want to give to improve the quality of life of Canadians can be given in the short term, in the period of 6 months to a year, is completely naive and will never result in the type of fundamental change in service delivery that we need. The plan for the NDP when it comes to affordable childcare will take 8 years to be fully implemented. In the first year, however, there will be 100,000 daycare spaces available at $15 a day. We're committed to delivering on that. We have the credibility to negotiate with the provinces. And the Quebec experience with this type of daycare resulted in the return to work of 70,000 women, and that is good for the economy.
Okay, Mauril Bélanger, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that, and then Emilie Taman, you'll get the final 30 seconds on this. So,
Mark, our plan to invest more in the families with children will lift 315,000 kids out of poverty. That is a very significant number. And the other thing I wanted to say is that the NDP have put themselves in a bit of a position of cruise control, where they'll have to make cuts, and the longevity of their planning will take years, perhaps 2 mandates. We will invest now because a majority of Canadians believe now is the right time for change, and we will do that.
All right, thank you. I'll give the final 30 seconds on this now to Emilie Taman.
Thank you. Well, in the context of this discussion, I'm going to bring it back to the affordable childcare plan. I'm a mother of 3 children. I know how difficult it is to find quality daycare close to where you live or where you work that you can trust and rely on. And the reality is that the plan that the Liberals are proposing is simply a tweaking of what the Conservatives have been offering. It's another shade of blue. It doesn't come close to delivering what Canadian families need. And I'm proud to be part of a party that has the vision to fundamentally change and improve the delivery of childcare services in this country.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to the next question, which I'll go back to the Marxist-Leninist candidate, Christian Legeais. Let's talk about an issue that's very specific to the riding of Ottawa-Vanier, one that people in the community care a lot about, the interprovincial bridge. Are we ever going to resolve that issue?
Yes, I think so. Well, the issue with this interprovincial bridge is that you have to take into account the opinion of Quebec and the opinion of Ontario. At the same time, the First Nation also, for some proposed route, they are to be involved. But in my view, to reduce the traffic, this should be done and paid by the monopoly who use the workers in Ottawa. And it's not an issue of individual transportation. The issue is that those monopolies should pay for the worker to bring them at work in the morning and bring them back home in the evening. That will solve this problem.
Okay, it's open to everyone now on this topic.
Sure. Mark, there is unanimity in the need of getting the 18-wheelers off of King Edward, because to have them in the middle of our capital city is absolutely intolerable. I've resisted transferring part of the problem to another community over the years, and thank goodness the Ontario government, with the help of Madeleine Meilleur, my provincial counterpart, when the NCC finally said we're going to put it at the Kettle Island, they said no, we will not do that. However, what they've done, and the city has joined them, because they're both funding 50% of a study to determine if it's technically feasible to have a tunnel underneath Lower Town, which would link the Macdonald-Cartier Bridge to the Queensway. And that's where the trucks would go. And of course, our $20 billion in infrastructure would be helpful to make that happen. I believe that that is likely. We will know by the end of the year the results of the study, and if it's technically feasible, that will be the solution. And I think most people will be happy with that.
This issue has been plaguing the nation's capital for close to 4 decades now. It's very clear that it's time to take action on this issue. I've had the opportunity already to engage with Toby Nussbaum and Mathieu Fleury, 2 of the city councillors in the riding, and it's clear that this is a question that's urgent from their perspective. As a former resident of Lower Town myself, I've seen firsthand how dangerous it is to be a pedestrian or a cyclist in the area. So it's very clear that while this feasibility study certainly represents a potential step forward, there have been numerous studies over the years, and it's really time for all the stakeholders to sit down and negotiate a way to have this move forward. I mean, one of the major difficulties in this city is the many layers of government, as people know all too well, that are engaged in these questions. And what I offer to residents of Ottawa-Vanier is a wealth of experience in bringing people together, building consensus, and moving towards action. And that's what we're going to see in the context of this issue, as well as a number of other issues in this riding.
I'm not sure that another tunnel downtown is what the city needs. It's already been extremely disruptive to the downtown core to have the O-train tunnel digging through. We have businesses on Rideau Street now that have got last-minute news that now they're shut down for a few years, or the street's being shut down for a few years. And I also think that we're just studying ourselves to death and not coming to a point where we have to decide what's best for the overall plan of this city. It's not, nobody wants the bridge in their backyard, but it's a reality of a growing city where we're trying to infill, where we have development on both sides of the Ottawa River. We have to get the cities deciding what do we want the future of our area to look like. We can't keep attracting new development, new housing development in areas that can't sustain it, because the city sees it as great taxes that are coming into their coffers. We have to we've been plagued in the last 20 years or so. I don't understand why this city doesn't seem to be able to get anything done. And I think maybe it's just too much government, not enough private investment, not enough private people wanting to get involved, and it's just it's a stranglehold on making this city a better place.
The NDP is committed to undoing the damage that's been done by the Stephen Harper administration in terms of becoming a stable partner for cities. We have a robust and exciting urban agenda as part of our platform, and that includes not only giving preferential treatment to large cities and not only giving preferential treatment to cities that are represented by Conservative members of Parliament. We want to be a long-term stable partner for cities, ensuring that they have the resources they need on a predictable and sustainable basis in order to direct their own priorities. And so I think what's really interesting and a really positive part of the plan that the NDP is proposing is to allow the cities, rather than having one big dump of 20 or 40 or 60 billion dollars of infrastructure spending, we're talking about predictable, long-term, sustainable financing so that cities can undertake projects like whatever it is that the city decides in this case will be appropriate, but to empower cities to be able to fix problems like this and to have a staple partner in not only in terms of resource and funding, but in terms of collaboration and cutting through the red tape that is occasioned by the fact that we do have so many layers of government.
Okay, let's, do you want the last 15 seconds, Mauril Bélanger?
Sure.
Okay.
In 2000, I participated in a task force organized by Prime Minister Chrétien, and we traveled across the country, and the two top priorities were transit and housing. That is what we will address with our $60 billion commitment of additional spending.
Okay, Christian Legeais, you get the final 30 seconds on this.
Yes, what I think is that to solve this problem also, what you have to look at is the direction of the economy. And what is needed is a new direction for the economy that uphold public rights and not monopoly rights. So what has to be done is to put this issue in the hand of the people so they can solve this problem and taking care of the collective interest and the general interest of the society.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to our next question, which I'll direct to Liberal candidate Mauril Bélanger. I want to talk about the federal public service. Many public servants live in Ottawa-Vanier and, of course, throughout the National Capital Region. It's unfortunate that the Conservative candidate declined to be part of the debate, but when I've asked the question to other Conservative candidates about the current government's relationship with the federal public service, many of them point to the fact that the Liberal government cut the public service in the years when Paul Martin was finance minister in an effort to balance the budget. So would things be any better for public servants in Ottawa under a Liberal government?
Well, Mark, what has happened during the majority period of Mr. Harper government, they introduced a couple of bills, C4 and C59, which were tilted entirely the respect that we've had in dealing with the federal public service totally sideways. They basically changed the entire laws and were then able to basically not negotiate in good faith, but basically decide on their own what they want to do. In the last bill, they gave the president of the Treasury Board total authority to decide on sick leave. We've committed to going back to the negotiating table and negotiate in good faith and perhaps save the workplace relationship that our professional public service have always enjoyed.
It's open to everyone now on this.
Well, it's very clear that there's serious problems in the relationship between the government and its public servants. I alluded to that in my opening remarks. It's an issue that's preoccupying a large number of residents in Ottawa-Vanier, and the NDP just yesterday held a press conference at my office to talk about our plan for rebuilding our relationship with the public service. And it's not platitudes. It's going to be necessary after the decade of harm by the Harper government and the cuts that preceded that government in terms of the Liberals' tenure, that an actual infrastructure be put into place to protect that relationship, to foster creativity and innovation among public servants. And what we're proposing is a 5-pronged plan to restore the public service. Number one, creating a code of conduct that would apply to ministers and their staff so that there's assurances that ministers and their staff are subject to the same type of expectations in terms of their conduct as public servants and to take partisanship out of that relationship. We want to enhance protections for whistleblowers because we've heard of too many cases of people being thrown under the bus by the political machinery. We want to protect the collective bargaining rights of our public servants. We're going to repeal very damaging legislation that was put in place by the Conservatives, and we're going to go back to the negotiating table and bargain collectively in good faith and with transparency. We're going to take a really hard look at the over-reliance that we've been seeing over time on temporary workers within the government, the public service framework. This has a lot of negative effects, not only in terms of the lack of security felt by those who are in perpetually short-term arrangements as public servants, but it also acts as an obstacle to the real development of professionalism, professional expertise, and capacity to be good providers of advice to the government. And finally, as I said, in the context of the NCC, we're going to look to take partisanship out of government appointments. We're going to have a nonpartisan body responsible for implementing that. And we're not just going to appoint our friends to that body. We're going to work with our colleagues in the House of Commons and with opposition parties to ensure that we have a truly nonpartisan appointment process for senior government officials.
Well, I think that it should be put an end to the contempt of the Harper government for the civil servants. Not only this government is attacking their condition of work, they are attacking their future, they are attacking their health also, and they are destroying the public servant. You have just to look at the destruction of the scientific library, the loss of expertise on that. So it has to be put.
That was actually, I think, put onto electronic form. Which was part
No,
of
it was not.
yeah.
No, most of it was not. Most of it was not. They do the same thing with the archive, National Archive, where they are not accepting funds and they are not doing anything with that. So this contempt and those attacks against the pension, against the future of the civil servant, it must be put an end to that.
Oh, absolutely. And as a former public servant myself, I mean, I can really speak to what a lot of public servants in this jurisdiction are going through. And I found that when I'm out knocking on doors, overwhelmingly, public servants immediately identify themselves to me as being public servants. And I've come to understand that that's a code for I'm ready for change. You don't run into a lot of public servants that are interested in seeing a continuation of a government that has attacked public science in this country, that has muzzled not only scientists, but other public servants who are just looking to put good policy in place for the good of Canadians. Toxic work environments, low morale are impeding public servants' ability to do their jobs. And I have to say this is something that has to be looked at and taken very seriously. Platitudes alone are not going to fix this problem. We heard just this week about a leaked memo from the Department of Foreign Affairs in which public servants within that department expressed grave concern about the policy direction of their department. And I was on a panel with a Conservative candidate whose initial reaction to hearing about that report was to simply state, well, that's false. And I took that as symptomatic of how the Harper government has dealt with public servants, rejects their advice time and time again, implements legislation that all of their public servant experts tell them is wrong-headed, the wrong policy direction, and in many cases unconstitutional, and proceed with it regardless of that advice.
Okay, so you get the final 30 seconds, Mauril Bélanger, because I asked you the question, so I'll let Coreen Corcoran go, and then you'll have a turn.
Okay, so from what I understand, the Conservative government has actually increased the size of the government, even though they said they were going to decrease it. We are also in about maybe the second year of a 5-year period where we're going to see about 25% of the federal government employees retire. So I'm not entirely sure why there's a lot of panic.
I'm going to have to stop you just because we are tight for time, so you've got 30 seconds, Mauril Bélanger.
When I was a minister, I trusted the public servants, and I listened to them, and I appreciated their advice. This has to stop because the Conservatives are not bothering to listen. We have a professional public service, and it must be respected. Mike Pearson, when he was Prime Minister, introduced the right to strike. And the other concern that I get at the door are retired public servants because they're afraid that their pensions will be cut.
Right.
We will not do that.
Okay. That brings us to the end of our series of debates. We'll move right to the closing statements now. Again, we'll do those in the reverse order of the opening statements. So we'll begin with the NDP candidate, Emilie Taman. Go ahead, you've got
Thank
1
you.
minute.
I would never doubt Mr. Bélanger's commitment to our riding. He's had a long career in the House of Commons. As you can see from this debate, there are a number of things we do agree on. But what I believe you have to consider when making your decision is this. We are living in a very different political climate today. Different times require different skill sets to succeed in creating truly positive changes. I've been out talking to many of you, and I know you feel the same way. You deserve an active and engaged member of Parliament with the conviction to stand up for the people and the neighbourhoods that make our riding great. I've spent my career working to protect Canadians. My time as a prosecutor has prepared me well for getting to the heart of a problem, building a consensus, and brokering real solutions. I am determined to rebuild our democracy. I promise to work tirelessly on your behalf. I look forward to your support so that together we can rebuild the Canada that we love.
Thank you. Coreen Corcoran, the Libertarian candidate, go ahead.
During my adult life, I have come to know two truths. There are some people you will never be able to win over, and people hear what they want to hear when they want to hear it. I'm not expecting to change anyone's life view here today, but I hope there are some undecided and disillusioned voters who will hear my message and consider that there is a viable alternative to the partisan politics we've had to endure for far too long. We are faced with leaders this election who have already committed to not working together. We are being led by narcissists who only care about the legacy they will leave. It is time to get ego out of politics and start running this country with leaders who care about a future where everyone works towards a common goal of making Canada an even greater country than it already is. The way to do that is to provide the people of this country with an environment where hard work is rewarded and innovation is nurtured. I have hope for this country, otherwise I wouldn't be standing up here today. Vote for real change this election, vote for the Libertarian Party of Canada.
Thank you. Next up is Liberal candidate Mauril Bélanger.
Thank you, Mark. You know, for 20 years I've been the MP for this riding. What I hear at the door is that people are satisfied and happy with the work I've done on their behalf, and I would love to continue doing that because I'm present all the time. I live in the riding. I go to all the meetings, the community association AGMs. I would like to continue doing that because I care deeply about this riding. Its nature, its diversity, the fact that it is part of the capital of Canada is exemplary in its linguistic duality. I have helped preserve Montfort Hospital and a number of other problems solved, and I hope to be able to continue. I respectfully ask for your support on October 19th.
Thank you. And finally, the Marxist-Leninist candidate, Christian Legeais. Go ahead.
Yes, one aspect we did not deal with tonight is the issue of an anti-war government. So that Canada is a factor for peace and not a preparatory war. So I want to make this point that an anti-war government would work to end the displacement of people as a result of war of aggression and occupation and to provide humanitarian aid to refugees and victims of natural disaster. At the same time, what I want to point out is what it means to occupy the space for change. Actually, only Harper wants nothing to do with change, especially not a change of government. So the space for change belongs to everyone. It is the extent to which the working people occupy this space for change that will determine the future of the society. Vote Marxist-Leninist.
I'll have to stop you there. Thank you very much. We're right out of time, but thank you to all the candidates for your participation in the debate, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on the local campaign.